To sort of piggyback on this, wasn't these totally different questions from different people, but based on what we just talked about, the question here is: could there be a wave of atheism, agnosticism over the next 30 years across countries? I mean, the Gallup poll towards sort of leans that way, but here's where I was kind of going with this question when I saw it in America, because we all live in America. We have a pretty big, hefty rise of Christian nationalism in terms of the government. You know, Christianity obviously been there since the beginning, right? Nobody has a problem with that. But the Christian nationalism, do you think that changes this next 30-year picture? Or is it really two different groups? A large group is moving away from religion, but a very core, vocal, strong, politically connected group is trying to implant it right into the government, which is really a very conflicting sort of environment. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think that you have to understand history when it comes to all of this. We had the Christian right that really, over the past over 50 years, have inserted themselves into the political, climate,
Yeah.
especially with the over with after the 1964 Civil Rights Act was ratified, and then they started to see in different right wing leaning Christian institutions getting slapped with DOJ lawsuits to say that, hey, you have to, like, specifically like Oral Roberts University and Liberty University, that said that, hey, you have to admit, people of color, you have to
Mhm.
admit, other people who happen to be not white people to your universities. And so what you then saw was that, oh, we can pick up other, different um, issues like abortion to act as a dog whistle to actually put poor people into our camp. So that was intentional. And they actually worked on that for years and years and years and years. So, what, in my opinion, needs to happen in this whole discourse is that if we want for something that to happen, like if we want to definitely work on peeling back what Christian nationalism, or what I like to call Christo fascism, has, like, inserted itself to do,
Mhm.
it has to be a concerted effort from the top down. Let's think about what Germany did after what happened with the Holocaust. They made concerted efforts in order for them to peel away all the different instances of authoritarianism and
Yeah.
fascism within their society, to the point where they made it illegal to say certain things and to mention certain people.
Yeah, I don't think you can have a Nazi flag. You can't have the swastika. I mean, it's illegal.
Yeah.
I don't know if we would go that far just because ours we do take the
Yeah, because of
free
free
expression very
speech.
powerful.
Sure,
But
sure. But I mean, but there's still, like, different actions that the governments can take in order for them to really change the narrative around how we look at how pluralism in the United
mhm.
States, right? And so if you have like it, if you have like atheism and agnosticism actually become a normalized conversation to say, like, hey, these people exist too, and it's okay,
Yeah,
then that's something that I think that would actually, be interjected into the discourse of, American society, to the point where not we're not like looked at as like pariahs, and people who happen to be different from, the rest of, like, faith and Christianity and things of that nature are not, think of the norm versus
sure.
everybody else.
Larry, what's your thought? You always have a political perspective on things.
Well, I think I, I I think that it will continue to decline, but I think over the last 20 years, which is really when I started realizing that I didn't believe, and actively professing that, um, that there's going to be we've pretty much hit that initial glut,
Mhm.
that initial mass has moved, and I think further movement, in my opinion, I don't know, will probably slow down a little bit, as far as people finding out that they're atheists, or acting upon it.
Mhm.
Because the internet's been around for 30 something years now.
Yeah.
Um, So like I said, I think that initial surge is going to do, and I don't think Christianity is going anywhere. I don't think any of the other religions are going anywhere. But hopefully they'll just reduce to be less significant. And that previous question about religion not being a major consideration, unfortunately, I think those good numbers are they're not attached to the right people. You know, the people that need to start developing that attitude are the ones that are the white nationalists, that are Christian nationalists, that are so actively and powerfully attacking not just this country, but other countries as well.
Yeah.
And they're the real danger.
Yeah. The Christian nationalism is the one thing that gets me going the most. I don't have a problem with people's beliefs. It's the Christian nationalism that bugs me the most. It's the one that's going to be, it's the most, to me, in my opinion, it's the most damaging in the sense that it's the one that could legally force me to do something based on your religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could observe your religion. I could not observe it. That's fine. It doesn't matter.
And it's probably the most,
at the threat of
the
being
most dishonest movement in history.
Would you say the most dishonest that we said?
Yes, the most dishonest, the one that is lined their road with lie upon lie upon lie upon misinformation and disinformation, and just repeating it often enough until they and their core followers believe it.
I agree. Jamalat, what question for you?
So my opinion is not very popular among atheists. So it's not that I'm pessimist about atheism growing, but I think it's limited in a way that if you see it at the individual level, I feel like a lot of people may cool down, like Derry said, but not necessarily become atheists or agnostics. Maybe they will switch to alternative spiritual venues where they can find similar advantages or things that they get from religion, such as, the sense of community, the spiritual, relationship with God, and everything that atheism does not offer. Like, we don't offer anything to people who are grieving. We don't offer anything to people who are going through hardship other than, some advice. But religion offers something that only faith can offer. And I feel like we have to also be realistic that some people actually need God to function. And I don't know, it takes a great effort to question things and to progress into atheism, depending on how indoctrinated they were when they were kids, or their ability, to embrace a whole new worldview, or to face rejection in their family and their community. It's not an easy thing to do. So even though I think there will be some atheism, more people becoming less religious, maybe not necessarily they will call themselves atheists or agnostics. Maybe they will change into something spiritual, theism, pantheism, anything.
I think to her point there, I think people who are not believing as strongly as they used to, or it's not as important to them, everyone's going to find their own comfort level. And in my own family, I have family members who if I had to call them what they were, they would be atheists. But
really?
They non-religious, don't go to any church, but they say things like, well, I think there's something out there, or so they get to that level where they can't quite bring themselves over that last line and say, well, nobody's bothering me, I don't go to church, I don't do any of the rituals, I don't read any of the dogma. But if I were to say that I was an atheist, that would cause a lot of problems for me. So I'm just going to kind of find this little niche and be comfortable and not ruffle any feathers. And, and exist that way, I'm happy enough. I'm finding enough truth in my existence to proceed that way.
Where level they are. I want to, Gentlemen, I want to come back to you in a second because you said something I do want to hit back on. But just to finish up your point, Larry. So I think that's actually really probably a very correct thing. I think a lot of people believe very similar to how we look at life, but that no God per se, in terms of accepting that or whatever you want to say, it's like a bridge too far, right? It's just that like, I don't know if I can go that far, but they you
do
said,
a
practically
risk-reward
speaking,
analysis. They'll say, well, what's going to happen if I go over that bridge?
Yeah.
Well,
and I think the word atheism has a lot of stigma attached to it.
Yeah.
The A word.
Loaded word.
And across that bridge.
Don't forget Pascal's wager with that too.
Yeah. Jose, you said something, I missed it.
Yeah, it's just speaking about a bridge too far, it reminds me of that psychology experiment where you have the one person walking into the elevator and he faces the people that are facing outward.
Right.
And you can literally measure the person's anxiety level just go up just because it is so it just drives anxiety in you to be the one person that kind of stands out in the crowd.
Yes.
And you just don't want that. I think it's a natural thing for people to, say, okay, well, why am I really, what's the point of me coming out and saying this if it's just going to cause me a little bit of anxiety? I got too many things going on with, family or work or whatever. I don't need that additional thing to, to make me anxious throughout my day. So I'll just go. And so to that end, I think I kind of understand it. So.
What are your thoughts on that though? Do you think is that okay? I mean, I'm not okay, and it's okay to Jose to do that, But what do you think about that? Is that fine? They just stop just short of that, or would you rather they go all the way?
One of the ways that I've learned to deal with people is to deal with them where they currently are and not where you want them to be, because that's always a way to be frustrated. So if that's where they're currently at now, I mean, that's kind of where you treat them and where you kind of interact with them. If you kind of see a little bit of a window in terms of, some light for conversation, then, I'll take it. But, always with kind of, some caution because, if it's somebody that, has a tendency to get, riled up or, may not be, that kind of emotionally secure to really talk about some of those sensitive things.
Mm-hmm.
And I may want to just stay away just because of that. But if somebody's open to it and, I can have that conversation, I feel relatively secure that, they're going to be okay talking about it. I don't mind talking. I like talking about it, obviously, but
I think we all do, right?
Yeah. But, just always with, always with a little bit of caution. So it doesn't bother me.
That's a very important thing. And I think one of the things like what Mike does for us all, but we can do it to his more on a one level in our own lives is live your atheism, for lack of a better term. Show confidence, show contentment, and tell them, hey, I'm a lot happier. I'm much less stressed. I'm much calmer. I'm easier to get along with, and it's all because. So you have to kind of give them an ideal, give them a visual representation rather than the representation we're painted with by those that are holding them loosely tied to any religious views.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that this is what you were doing, Larry, but it does remind me of that conversation. Tell me if any of you all had somebody at the church when you were religious say this to you, like one of those let the light shine through kind of conversations.
Oh God, yes. Right. And let your light so shine before men, so that they will listen. I've been into a couple of productions of Godspell. So yeah. Matter of fact, I had to lead that damn song with, you are the light of the world. So I get it. But yeah, I mean, like, I think of because I'm part of a group through the Freedom from Religion Foundation called Godless Gospel. And the person who, one of the founders and presidents, Dan Barker, wrote a song called Life is Good. And it was just basically talking about the very thing that we just discussed about. Now that I deconstructed from religion, even though the deconstruction is something that happens daily, right? But I have shed a lot of the anxieties that I've had when I was a faith-based person. I don't fear hell. I don't fear being excommunicated from God because I did something or said something that God did not like. Yeah. I if I missed a prayer or I don't feel cursed because I don't tithe, right? Like all of these different things that have been basically like imbued in a lot of believers, especially like especially like the ones who have gone to church for decades, right? Who were told that, okay, these are the different things that you have to do in order for you to live a faith Christian chaste life, right? And so now I'm like, when you really examine all the things that have been told to us, like you have to be monogamous, you have to pay tithes, you have to fear hell, you have to be concerned about sin, you have to not curse God, or all these different things. And even cursing God can be some of the most, minute thing that you may not even think that you're doing, but you are doing. I mean, like when you used to say like all that is bullshit and you just can put that away, then you really be like, okay, well, these are the anxieties that I don't necessarily have to worry about. Now, does anxiety completely go away? No, it doesn't. Because we have other things that, life has presented to us that we could be anxious about. But religion ain't one. And I'm really grateful that at least that portion of my life is not something that holds me, because oh my gosh, I could just think of like going to church, listening to a sermon, and feeling the guilt of that sermon until the next time that I happen to go to church. Right. And I don't necessarily think that is a healthy way for any person to live. And to be and to be able to shed that stuff and say, you know what, there is nothing that we can empirically look at to say that any of this stuff should be corroborated to the point where I should completely maneuver my life in order for me to lean on these things as truth. So why am I actually giving myself to these things? Because the only thing that they're really doing is causing me harm. I reject them. And I feel so much better that I did. So there you go.
I agree. I want to get back to John Millette. You brought up something earlier, and Cynthia almost segued right back to this, actually, in terms of the comfort. You had said, and I'm going to paraphrase what you said, when we were talking about the decline of religiosity, and I think you sort of alluded to, and correct me if I misunderstood it, but there's sort of a plateaued, and there's going to be a chunk of people that will always need the religion because of death and grieving and that extra strength that they don't have internally. Am I characterizing what you said correctly?
Yes.
First of all, okay. So that's actually a good point. I just wanted you to maybe, if you thought about that, what do you say to that person? Because I agree. I think the comfort that Christianity, or I say Christianity because we all came from that background, but religion in general, and Christianity here in the United States is the largest, obviously. But the comfort that does provide, even though we just talked about how sometimes it can create anxiety, at the same time, there's a level of comfort, right? There is a level of comfort. If you're God forbid, okay, God forbid, as the atheist, I say this, it's just vernacular, right? But say something happened to one of your children. Is there anything more comforting than saying, I'm going to see this child again when I die? I mean, that has got to get you through the day, right? It's got to get you wake up the next morning, you can go on because you're going to see this person again. Or, my life is just going to hell right now, and it's going to get better because God's got a plan for me, and I'm going to get through this. But what do you say to that person as an atheist? Do you try to talk them out of that, or do you try to give them a different perspective, or do you just say you're on your own? What do you do when you run into that sort of thought process?
Well, if it's someone that has recently, suffered a loss, I will not be talking about atheism to that person out of respect. I think it's not a good time. I will let them process their feelings at their own speed whenever they're ready.
Yeah.
I feel like I like to talk about my atheism to people who are already questioning it and not necessarily go militant about it, because I don't like people, trying to convert me when I'm not interested, So I try to do the same to other people. But if they ask me, Yamilet, how do you process, the loss of a loved one? I would say, relying on your friends, relying on people who, support you, talking to people who also are grieving the same person. I feel like that helps a lot to relate to someone who has gone through the same. Being in a support group of people, who are going through that depression, of losing a wife, a son, and being able to relate to another mother or to another husband who's grieving. I think that's what can help. Or simply going to therapy, talking to a professional, and trying to, find ways to cope, which is something that we as humans can do. We cannot do more. For me, as an atheist, I cannot even conceive the idea of, heaven. It sounds like a fairy tale to me. But to people who actually find it possible, good for them that it helps them during that difficult time. Like I would say, I would not argue with them when they're going through that.
I'm similar. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I always like Carl Sagan's quote. He said, "If it takes a little myth and ritual to see us through a night that seems endless, who among us cannot sympathize and understand?" Yeah, another part of it, right, that then talks about if you really want true understanding, then obviously you got to go further than that. But I always like that part because it kind of reminds you to like slow down. Sometimes when you have the instinct to like, interject because they're saying something so kind of out there or crazy that in your mind it's like, oh, well, that doesn't really make sense. Like, why would God totally take your child who, died of, brain cancer or something? But but you just have to remember that because it's very true. Like, you just have to let them process it, and they need at that moment, those are the tools that they have in hand. They haven't learned to use your tools yet, so you got to have patience with them until, at some point in the future, you may have that opportunity to introduce new tools.
I think you're right. I've always said that I give people a pass, and I don't push atheism. As I mentioned, I think before this call we were kind of talking. I'm not an activist type, so I don't push it. Now people think we're pushing it just because I speak about it at all. That's not the point. I'm not out there banging a drum per se. But you're right. I think just like you both have said, if that's what helps them get through, why? You're gonna have to remind me of that segment because I'm gonna write that down. But because that's such a good way of saying it. In that moment, let them use whatever they need to get through the day. We can talk about these intellectual points of that later, but when they're grieving, I mean, what an asshole thing to do would be like, by the way, there is no God.
Yeah, if they're grieving, I'm giving them a pass for sure.
Pass.
Like, absolutely. But if I'm grieving and they start to bring their bullshit, my bullshit,
you're right.
I'm gonna have something fuck to say about that.
That part.
All bets are off.
I've never witnessed it in person. I have read many stories and many anecdotes about an altar call happening at a funeral service.
Oh my!
So here's the problem. We see that as disgusting and inappropriate. Were we to try to do something like that to promote our atheism?
Oh my Lord!
So it's not an equal street. It's not a two-way street.
No,
it's a one-way street. And since you're at a funeral, the people there have undoubtedly suffered some level of loss. Many are at their lowest point. If they're close enough to the person, that's when they get them.
I think that it's important to remember that the indoctrination is not just individualistic, it's societal.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
remember,
That's it.
even though like Christianity is on the decline, as we talked about previously, it's still the majority of the population. And it hasn't and
By far.
it
Yeah.
yeah, and it's still very much so, you know, stamped on the institutions and even how we think, and also how we culturally proceed with, you know, different things in life, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, like, I've I can remember, as an anecdote, my niece, my eldest niece, passed away from a car accident, and
Mm.
I remember planning her service. And even though I knew specifically that she was not a Christian,
Mhm.
that it was very much so pushed to have a Christian type of ceremony.
Yeah.
And I felt a way about it. I felt first off that we were denigrating her memory, because I know that this is something specifically that we talked about. She said that even though that she believed in something, like she was one of those people who were spiritual but not religious.
Mhm.
But
Sure.
at the same time, she specifically said out of her mouth to me on more than one occasion, Auntie Cindy, Christianity is bullshit. So I felt a way that we had to plan this ceremony around Christian ritual when I knew that's not something that she really believed in. But in order just
Mm.
to get it done and to satisfy all the different voices that were coming from one part to another, I acquiesced, and then that's what we ended up doing. And I remember specifically looking for people to come and sing, because I didn't want to, because I'm an atheist and people knew I was an atheist. And I knew that they're going to want Christian songs and Christian music and all this other different stuff. And I
Sure.
don't believe in any of that. But, you know, but nobody would do it. So I stepped up and did it. And all these different songs that was requested to be sung at her funeral were Christian songs. And I was like, God damn it. So,
Right.
you know, so I mean, I did it. But the crazy thing about it is that even though I'm a whole atheist and I don't hide this from anybody, I'm very open about this.
Yeah.
There were people in the congregation with their hands lifted and crying and calling to Jesus. Some of them were speaking in tongue and all this other stuff.
Oh
And I'm
my
just looking at like, oh my
goodness.
God.
That's actually
You
a
know,
really interesting point. I never thought about that. You know, I always say, you know, I tell my wife, like, when I die, just cremate me. Don't spend
yeah,
a lot of effort on it. And she knows my beliefs. But, you know, funerals are for the living. The dead's dead, right? We all
yeah,
believe we're dead. So the
yeah.
funerals are for the living. So I can see being somewhat conflicted on that. Do I honor their memory and
Yeah.
their thoughts, or do I soothe the people that are left behind who are trying to get through it?
And
I
I would
I don't
admit,
know.
Mike, I would admit, Mike, that's exactly what I did. I
I could
did
see where
this.
you would.
Yeah, I did this specifically, like planning this whole thing
Yeah.
to appease the people who were going to be in the pews.
Yeah,
It,
you know, it feels
and
wrong, but it's kind of right. I don't
you
know.
know, I think that, and it was mostly just to keep the peace, because, like,
Sure.
you know, as far as like we wanted to do something very private, lay her to rest amongst family alone, especially this is at the height of pandemic. So we really didn't want to, you know, have a bunch of people in a single space, because it could have
Sure.
possibly, you know, be a spreader event.
Right. Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
you know, but like, of course, the parents felt otherwise, and then I was pressured to change things, and I was like, oh, but I don't, and I had to, so I had to kind of get out of myself to the point where, like, it's not necessarily about me. But when
Right.
at the end of the day, when we looked at this whole thing, it's not about her either. So,
Yeah. That's the
and
thing, right? She's
and
gone.
I think, yeah, she's gone. But the thing is, it's like we all just basically acquiesce to what societal norms are when it comes to stuff like this. And we basically just gave in to, like, hey, when a person dies, especially when you're looking at this particular community, we got to go Christian. We got to go gospel. We got to do all the things. The only
Right.
thing that I insisted on, I was like, please, I need you not to do an altar call at the end of this service. this ceremony.
Yeah.
Please don't do that. And so they said, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to follow whatever type of mass thing that the ministers were going to do. But I mean, like, because like I understand that I've been through losing people when I was a Christian, and I've been through losing people when I was an atheist. And I definitely tell you that when you lose people as an atheist, especially when you're thinking about all the things that you used to believe, it messes with you, right?
Yeah, sure.
But at the same time, because you go through this whole thing like, well, when I was a Christian, I found comfort in this whole notion about seeing my loved one again. You know,
yeah,
like if they happen to pass and, you know, they're no longer in this particular plane. But I mean, like I fight with myself, and I force myself to really think about what specifically are we helping with when, you know, we kind of acquiesce to that thought pattern.
Yeah.
And I mean,
continuing.
like, yeah, and I agree with most of the panel that I don't really push it. Obviously, I haven't before in the past, and I don't necessarily think that I'm going to do it in the future.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, but if it comes up and if they say, well, what's your opinion about it? I'm not going to keep silent about it. I'm like, you know, I don't necessarily think that, you know, us being to the point where we're looking at these rituals that we do along with belief systems is necessarily a great thing in order for us to say that this is the way that we should be thinking and proceeding when people pass away, or in any way, you know, because like, how is that furthering us in the future, especially when
probably not, but
yeah,
I would submit it's actually reversing.
I agree,
going backwards.
Yeah, I think it's regressive. I agree with that as well.
Here's part of our tradition. Should we plan our own funerals as part of our?
Oh, I was just going to tell you my thoughts on planning my own service, if you don't mind. First of all, Cynthia, all those people that you sang for, even though you were an atheist and stuff, and you said they knew you were an atheist, they're going to have that drive home, and they're going to say, "See, I told you she really believed."
You are so right. Oh my God, Larry. Wait. Quick. So my sister calls me and says, I know you don't believe in God, but God was definitely using you when you were sick.
Oh, God was using you.
So then they can use that as an anecdote. They can use it as an anecdote to go forward and say, well, atheists actually do believe in God, you know, and here's
we've heard that.
Yeah. And that's probably, that just bolsters their point. So my thoughts on my own demise and service of remembrance. I'm going to have Bible readings. I have yet to finish lashing them out, but there'll be some Ezekiel. There'll be dashing the kids against the rocks. There'll be the emissions and the donkeys and the horses and stuff.
Why have you beat me these 3 times?
cursing the fig tree, one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And my absolute favorite is the bald man calling the bears from the woods because the kids teased him.
Yes.
So
gotta cuss the kids.
See now, Larry, I'm in.
What about the one about women being silent and that one? No,
is Larry.
Because I'm gonna hopefully some women will be reading these. So
well, we talk too much anyway. Don't you know that? I mean, like, we need to be like hush.
And then the longest reading will probably be the Sodom and Gomorrah story, both before and after
the whole thing,
destruction of the cities, so that everyone in attendance can get the full flavor of the Bible.
Hey, and Larry, don't forget the cherry on the top. That's an interesting story. Don't forget the cherry on the top. When God turned Lot's wife into a pillar of salt.
I said, Larry, I'm in a weird position where, like, I don't want you to die, but I want to go to your funeral. Because I want to see how that plays out. So,
Mike, I'm much older than you. I expect to see you there. And I look down upon you from heaven.
Look down upon you. You better be there, goddamn it.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to today's show. I really hope you enjoyed it. Do do me a favor and like and subscribe to the show and tell a friend? That helps us grow and it lets us keep bringing you more voices from the other side of belief. Until we talk again, be kind to one another and remember that reason and compassion go a long way.